Ah,
Greg.
hi Linda, how are you?
I'm good. Welcome to my home.
Thank you so much for inviting me in, and thank you also for setting this time aside to do this interview with me. I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Now, one of the reasons why I really wanted to interview is I attended the Top 10 event several weeks ago, and I saw you speak, and after having the chance to meet you afterwards, I was just so inspired to share your story with the Be Who You Want to Be community. Some of the things that really inspired me were all these challenges and successes that you've been through, and I believe they're a true testament to your persistence, your dedication, and your commitment. And I believe they speak volumes worth of wisdom that we all could benefit from. So with that being said, I have a few questions I would love to ask you.
Well, my pleasure. And I have to say that when I heard about the work that you were doing, it really resonated with me because I really feel like our education system works well for some people, not that great for other people, depending on their way of learning and the way they're wired. And so it's really exciting for me to think that I can have some impact on creating awareness of different ways of living, getting work done, learning, and achieving.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to find out a little bit more and to obviously share that. So
Okay.
I'm going to start with my first question.
Okay.
Now, I ask this question to everyone that I interview, and the reason why I do this is to really give the viewers a chance to get to know a little bit about who you are. So with that being said, could you share a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do?
Well, I spent my formative years until I was 17 years old in a little tiny community in northwestern Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
The community is known as Red Lake.
Right.
And the area around Red Lake, which was the big town, was called the Red Lake District. And I didn't live in Red Lake. Red Lake had about 1,500 people. I was born in a hamlet, actually. Red Lake was a town, and Sarah Olson was a hamlet of about maybe 30 people. And that's where I was born. It's northwestern Ontario. So if you look at the map and you see where the Manitoba border goes like this and then it goes like that to Hudson Bay, well, Red Lake is sort of right at that bend.
Right.
And 75% of the population of the area were First Nations people who were living on their traditional land, on their ancestral homeland for thousands of years. I didn't know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up in a tiny little hamlet like Sarah Olson, and when I was 6, I think, we moved to a village of about 300 people. And Red Lake was about 20 miles away, so we went, that's where we went to do some shopping and things like that. Now, when I say shopping, I'm talking about a grocery store and a post office and a curling rink. Our outside connection to shopping was really through Eaton's catalog.
Right.
And there may be some people who don't even know what Eaton's catalog is or what Eaton's is, but Eaton's was a very, very big company that had stores all across Canada, and they produced a catalog, and it was about 1 inch thick, and it would arrive twice a year, and oh my God, that was so exciting when that happened because it was our connection with the outside world.
Uh-huh.
Once a year, we would drive to Winnipeg, about an 8-hour drive. We would drive to Winnipeg, which was the nearest city, to have our teeth checked, to go to the dentist.
Right.
And so that was always a very big deal, to go to Winnipeg once a year. And my mother had a love of fabric, but also for practical reasons, because there weren't stores up there, and my dad was an underground miner, so he worked in the gold mines there, and, he was a laborer. And so we were not rich. We didn't have a lot of money, and so we made everything. And the house that we lived in Starrett Olson, which was the little hamlet, my dad built out of trees that he cut down,
Wow.
pulled the bark off of them, made the corner of the house so that, that it joined together like that with the logs, plugged it out with... Now, this is an area where I can remember many days where it was 40 below zero Fahrenheit. So around 40 degrees is when Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same.
Right.
So 40 degrees below zero without a wind chill factor.
Wow.
So, so it was cold in the winter, but it was a beautiful cold. It was a clean cold. The snow was white. And we always had a lot of fresh fish that we caught in the lake. My dad would hunt for deer, ducks, geese, partridges, moose, and we had a garden. And so it was always a big treat to go to the store and buy a roast beef. Or I always remember TV dinners. When TV dinners came in, it was such a big deal to go and get a TV dinner, put it in the oven and eat it, We didn't have a TV though, but we did have the TV dinners. In fact, up there, we didn't really have a phone until I was about 9 or 10 years old, I think. And even then, it was a party line. So if it rang 3 times, we picked it up. If it only rang twice, somebody else picked it up. So,
right.
So when you wanted to talk to somebody, you just went over and talked to them. When you had a long distance phone call, I mean, it was always a big deal because it cost money and we had to wait for those 3 rings.
Right.
So it was an isolated place, but it was a place where I think it bred a sense of resourcefulness. There was no yellow pages. There was no, goods and services. You had to do them yourself or make them. And so when my mom started buying fabric on our yearly trips to Winnipeg, more than what she needed, and she would invite all the ladies in the neighborhood to come over, and what that started out being just a social thing grew into a fabric store in our basement. Now, we're living in a village of about 300 people, but my mother's fabric store was the only one for about 150 miles. And so a lot of the native women would come in from northern reservations. They would fly in and take a taxi from Red Lake to my mom's fabric store in our basement. So word spread, and I remember loving it in my mom's fabric store because apparently when I was 3 years old in the hamlet we lived in, I sat down at my mom's sewing machine and I tried to sew.
Right.
And my mom, to her credit, saw this happening. Most mothers would say, "Oh my God, don't touch that because this is her prized possession." I mean, this is like having a 3-year-old fool around with your car. And it was a big deal. And she didn't stop me. She just took the needle out so I wouldn't hurt myself.
Right.
That little featherweight sewing machine, which she bought from Eaton's catalog, was what I learned to sew on when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And I was a bit of a prodigy. I was a bit of a child prodigy because by the time I started school at the age of 6, I was sewing my own clothes.
Wow.
And by the time I was 14, I was sewing clothes for other people.
Wow.
And by that time also my mother's fabric store had expanded to be, I just loved it down there. Now ask me how I did in school.
How did you do in school?
Well, May the 24th was the beginning of the fishing season. And my dad always used to say, you can educate a fool and he'll still be a fool. My parents did not, unlike a lot of parents, my parents did not place a lot of emphasis on education. Neither of them had much of an education. I think my mother had grade 8. My dad had none.
Right.
Because they were immigrants that came to Canada and homesteaders, and going to school just beyond that wasn't an option. The beginning of fishing season was also when exams started in school. May, right? School finishes in June.
Yeah.
What are you doing in June? You're doing exams.
That's right.
Well, guess where I was the night before the exams?
Yeah.
I was out fishing. And if I wasn't fishing, I was staying up till all hours of the night, making myself an outfit to wear to the exam. Because I didn't do well in school, to answer your question.
Right.
I just found that my life in school was sitting in rows and learning, memorizing stuff that was written on the board, and I couldn't see the board because I needed glasses, but we only went into Winnipeg once a year, so I didn't get my eyes checked for several years. And so I couldn't see the board, and I didn't like sitting still. And then when I left school, I went to this home environment where I could sew, and I could go fishing and hunting with my mom and dad, and drive the boat, and stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning cleaning fish, and living off the land.
Right.
And so I think that background shaped and formed a lot of the way that my brain continued to work after I left that environment. In some ways that now that I look back on it, at the time I didn't realize it, but hindsight is 20/20. Now that I look back on it, I can see the patterns and I can see the significant things that really shaped the person that I am today, and how I approached my career and my work.
Wow, that's incredible. I've heard this story before because you've shared this with me, so it's beautiful to hear it again because it feels like I just got transported into another time and another period.
Yeah.
I was imagining being in that boat, and all these things that you were saying. It's quite beautiful.